What is up, wrestling fans? I almost said sports fans. And I don't know why, but sports fans almost came out just now, and no reason why. It just almost came out. But this isn't the Two Bros Sports Show. It's the Two Bros Wrestling Show. Kevin, how you doing?
Doug, I'm sure that some of us are sports slash wrestling fans or sports entertainment fans, which is what we're here to talk about on the Two Bros Wrestling Show with a main event topic that I know.
Not the Two Bros Sports Entertainment Show.
It doesn't sound right off the lips, does it?
It doesn't.
Sports entertainment never has. We're here to talk wrestling, pro wrestling.
Yes.
In particular, a topic in our main event tonight that is near and dear to Doug's heart.
Oh, man, I have a New Japan shirt on. Oh, that's poor planning on my part.
Hey, that's all right. There's an alliance there, so we think that's might be where this whole belt collector thing's headed anyway, right?
Yes, yes.
It's Double or Nothing, Doug, next Sunday night.
Double or Nothing Doug. That's a cool name for me. Dynamite Doug, Double or Nothing Doug.
I like that. We might have to switch to that name for you because at least tonight you are going to be talking Double or Nothing. We're going to be talking Double or Nothing. We hope the folks at home chime in and talk Double or Nothing. We're going to preview the entire card. And unlike WWE the last couple of times when we've been a week or so out, there's a lot of matches to talk about.
Yes, there is.
A lot of times WWE doesn't let us know what they're doing until the week of. So we got a lot to talk about. And in fact, Doug, I would suggest we get to it because there is a lot in the news to go over as well.
Let's do it.
Opening bell.
Was that a doorbell?
It's actually a 10-bell salute, but it's a longer than the ring bell, which lasts like 6 seconds, the sound effect I normally use. And so it usually goes right into the next thing, and I'm trying to stop it. But that is an opening bell still, a wrestling bell to bring us to the news. And there is so much to talk about. I hardly know where to start, and I want us to discuss a few of these items. But, Doug, everything from industry news to touring news to notable releases, notable deaths, a lot. So let's start first with what talks about, for wrestling fans, what affects us probably the most, what we see, the tickets we buy, where we tune in our TVs, because big news coming out this week is the announcement that AEW is moving from TNT to TBS beginning in 2022. As part of this large announcement, it was also revealed AEW is going to add a new 1-hour program, AEW Rampage, on TNT beginning in August, and then come 2022, it also will move to TBS. But it's not going to leave TNT without wrestling, as TNT is going to be promised as part of this new deal 4 quarterly specials, which to me, and I'm sure to other fans like Doug and those that are a certain vintage, sort of sounds familiar. Clash of the Champions, back when those were aired on the Turner networks, which I'm actually kind of excited about, since AEW doesn't do as many pay-per-views. To have those off months with a special thing like a Clash of the Champions every so often, I think that could be big business for AEW. But overall, Doug, what do you think about this move?
Man, I think it's going to be great. I mean, what was it? There was some sort of sports programming that TNT picked up, so I think it was necessitated by that. But, I've also heard that TNT had offered Tony Khan a 3rd hour for Dynamite, and I think he wisely said, yeah, let's not do that. Let's just give me another hour elsewhere in the schedule.
And that elsewhere in the schedule is actually Friday nights, 10 o'clock, right at the conclusion of SmackDown.
Exactly. So, it's great because, then you can slide right over or just jump right in and go back and watch SmackDown later.
And that show is supposedly going to have its own angles. They want it to be distinct from Dynamite, which I think is, considering, I've railed many times on Dark and Dark Elevation being missed opportunities. And I thought, please don't add just a 3rd hour on linear television of just another Dark style show. But the opportunity is there to separate some roster members and have them almost exclusive to Rampage. I'd love to see it have its own title. I'd love to see it have its own storylines that are specific to it. But I guess cart before horse, we're getting ahead of ourselves, getting excited about Rampage before we even have a chance to see it. But obviously they've been saying for a while that they had more programming that will be coming on Turner Networks, and that was part of this announcement. As far as the move to TBS, to me, it's almost a linear move in some ways. I mean, it is big news, but in other ways, it's not as if one of the broadcasting networks on Turner there is significantly larger than the other. I do, obviously TNT had the history as far as being the Monday Night Wars, ground zero for WCW programming. But it's not like WTBS doesn't have its own history with professional wrestling. In fact, for fans, again, I'll say of an older vintage, for a lot of us, WTBS might very well be the very first place we saw professional wrestling.
Yeah, I like that vintage. And a side note here, you're talking about Rampage and its own title. What's going to happen with the TNT Championship then?
Meltzer is saying that just because it works with, if you didn't have a broadcast network, you could have a TNT Championship, and it doesn't sound as strange as saying the TBS title. So there is not an indication at this time that they're going to be changing the name. So you'll have the TNT title being defended on TBS.
Well, I imagine it makes sense to keep it on Dynamite since it is a TNT title. So do we get a Rampage-themed title for that show? We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. There will be a lot to talk about, but obviously this is big news in the world of wrestling. And while we're talking big news on the industry side of things, WWE released an ad during last week's WrestleMania Backlash event, which was surprising to a lot of us, and we didn't call it out last week. But instead of Money in the Bank, which had originally been scheduled as the next pay-per-view, because I had it on our schedule to be talking about it next month, I'm like, wait a minute, did I get that wrong? I went back and checked. No, it was originally supposed to be Money in the Bank coming in June. They have instead, and last week they ran it as an ad, decided that June 20th show would be the Hell in a Cell event. And other than just one exception in its history, Hell in a Cell has always taken place at some point in October. So the pivot away from Money in the Bank, as it turns out, was the announcement that they had out this week. Something had been rumored and we talked about for a while, but it was made official that WWE is returning on July the 18th for the pay-per-view. Is now Money in the Bank in front of a live crowd. So on July 16th, they're going to be starting a live SmackDown with a crowd, and that's the beginning of 25 shows that they're going to be running between that date and the end of summer, their return to live event touring. So big news because, in addition to that, this week, related, Ring of Honor announced that Best in the World, which is their next pay-per-view, Sunday, July 11th, that is also going to be in front of a paying audience. The first time in almost a year and a half for Ring of Honor, who shut down completely much sooner than some of the other organizations did. So they're going to have social distancing, limited capacity, pod seating, that sort of thing. They noted that they're going to be taking temperatures at the door, masks will be required, yada, yada. But the big news with all of this, you take that combined with WWE's news, you take what we reported last week about AEW saying that, making it official that they are returning to live touring in July for Dynamite, having those shows done live in front of an audience, full audience again, MLW coming back. And essentially, Doug, that means within the next 2 months, six weeks to 2 months, every major organization other than Impact, as far as we know, in the United States are going to be back open to a paying customer.
And I'm happy about that. I'm more comfortable with that than I would have been, say, a month ago. Sure. I think we're turning in the right direction all around. I don't think it's a rush at this point, so I'm happy, man. Just seeing events with live crowds, it kind of reminds you of what the business is all about and what we've missed during this Thunderdome era.
We saw what a difference it made for WrestleMania, so I'm very much happy to have that excitement back in the on our broadcast. And as a fan, I'm sitting here like refreshing the page, looking around, trying to find those 25 cities. They haven't all been announced yet, WWE's 25 cities, because I'm hoping they're coming somewhere close, because I'm also, like most of us, so eager to get out and do things. Like, I'm hoping they have a show somewhere near that your bros can go to and experience in person, because it's been a long wait for this. And I know wherever they hit, I expect we're going to see capacity crowds for all of these companies. Go out and support these men and women who, especially for these small, Ring of Honor, MLW, these guys who, don't get subsidized necessarily by large millionaires, billionaires that run, on the major networks. These folks make a living off these live events, and they have not been able to do so. So go support them as soon as you can buy a ticket. I'm all for it. But as you said, Doug, we're both more comfortable, but it's still, and this will relate to my next two news items. Tony Khan said that this week that Daly's Place is going to be running at 100% capacity for Double or Nothing, which we'll be talking about here in our main event topic. But it is the first time since the COVID-19 pandemic began that AEW and Daly's Place is going to take place in front of a full audience. So that at Daly's Place, we're talking 5,500 people there. Again, related to capacity and not just live fans, because they've had fans there at AEW. New Japan has, they've been touring since, earlier in 2020, they began opening up because Japan did much better than the United States as far as coronavirus containment. However, as we have reported on our show these last couple of weeks, New Japan has had to cancel a few shows because of, those rates rising. Well, they announced this week this past week, they announced that they were going to be able to put back on, what was it that they had canceled here? Oh, I lost it. Okay, the events that were scheduled to take place at Corrigan Hall were going to take place as planned. So those began last night, and then tomorrow and the following night. This is because the coronavirus rates had rolled back down. They put a pause in New Japan on their live shows because of the state of emergency that was affecting many parts of the country. And now that that's back under control, those events are now back on. And we've mentioned this before. It is worth pointing out that the same thing could happen here. So while we are cautiously optimistic that Ring of Honor, MLW, AEW, WWE all can sell you a ticket, it is worth watching and making sure that wherever you buy a ticket to might not have their situation change to a point that you might have, if not a cancellation or postponement, at least more hoops I just jump through, Doug, because Japan has been sort of a cautionary tale. They've gone back to so many things before we did that we can see what's happened there and can expect that something similar could very well happen here as well.
I'm really wondering what like the vaccination rate is, or how they even verify that. Asking for people's papers at the door. Are you vaccinated? Are you unvaccinated? The unvaccinated go over here and wear a mask. The vaccinated to this side of Daly's Place, and you can hang out unmasked.
We'll
see, man. We'll see.
Moving from industry news to releases, we had several large, I guess WWE had their major release right after WrestleMania, and then NXT got the delayed reaction this week as we had 8-9 men and women that were let go from their contracts. Now, many of these were performers that were just performance center students, so to speak, folks that haven't made their way to TV or don't have high profile names in the business. But there were some who most of wrestling fans would be familiar with. Some of the higher profile names included Alexander Wolf, who'd been part of Imperium and at one point was part of Sanity. Jessamine Duke, who was a legit martial artist who had come to WWE with the MMA Four Horsewomen, so part of that Ronda Rousey crew with Shayna Baszler and Marina Shafir, and so she's gone, bit of a surprise. But the two most notable names, without question, are also two that have been tied to some controversies and not anything to do with how they were being used or We Have Nothing For You. Velveteen Dream has been let go, and he had such a promising career that had been squandered by, for one, he apparently was very difficult, and there had been stories for a while that he'd been difficult behind the scenes and that a lot of the talent didn't like him. But it had also been reported, Doug, that he had some friends in higher places at corporate. which maybe protected him some, but he could not be protected against the allegations that came up against him last year.
So it's weird because WWE had released statements saying that they looked into those allegations and found nothing. They couldn't corroborate anything. Of course, then allegedly folks reached out who were involved with the allegations and said nobody ever bothered to contact me. So I'm not really sure what that was, but it sounds like there's a whole boatload of things going on with Dream. I mean, I think back to Tough Enough, and Patrick, I forgot his last name, but Dream was not one of my favorite individuals on the show. I don't think he was really anybody's, but the dude could work. He made me a believer when he was on, when he was in NXT. And I was like, all right, this kid can work. This kid's got something. He's going to go places.
And the character was 24 karat too. I mean, that character I could see making the transition to the main roster and headlining with main eventers that we have on Raw and SmackDown. But he was apparently his own worst enemy.
I guess so, man. You and I and the folks watching are never going to know really what came from those allegations that he was entangled in. But it seemed that they just continued to stack up, and for whatever reason, WWE's chosen to let the talent go. So there's got to be.
We're not talking just hearsay here, Doug. I mean, we mentioned it on the show, and it's been well reported. I know we haven't spelled it out just now, but the accusations as part of the whole speaking out movement that we covered widely last year was that Dream had been involved with some underage fans, or at least having inappropriate conversations with underage fans, and there were some pretty embarrassing emails and things that came to light. Not smoking guns, but still not great for the company or not a good look on Dream. And yes, you noted it that at least on a corporate level, an internal investigation was supposedly done, and they publicly, Triple H himself came out and said we couldn't find any wrongdoing, but it never really was the same for Dream after that. I mean, he was just used very sporadically, and in fact, we haven't even seen him on TV since losing to Adam Cole in December, and he's not hurt. So I think it's a culmination of all those things that finally caught up with him.
Yeah, there were some reports earlier this week that I guess he was around the ring sessions a lot lately at NXT, leading to a lot of folks believing that he was going to become a trainer or a coach. And a lot of the talents were very uncomfortable with that too, apparently, from all accounts. So
it was reportedly backstage at Raw a couple of weeks ago too, which led to other speculation. So no speculation anymore. He's gone.
He's gone.
Then there's referee Drake Wirtz, who we reported a few weeks ago about Wirtz being in hot water with the company due to his extreme political views that he willingly shares on Facebook and the like. And then, of course, the most recent controversy being him calling into an online government meeting from the WWE Performance Center while dressed in his NXT ref shirt and loudly delivering his argument that masking mandates were benefiting child traffickers. And then he later defended this controversy on Facebook by writing, "If this is, quote, radical, then label me an extremist for Christ." So I know.
What else we got in wrestling news, Kevin?
I will say we wish all the released talent well in their future endeavors, except for Dream and Wirtz. How about that? Moving on. In injury news, Doug, Will Osprey, someone who I do wish well to, and I wish we got to see him more. Amazing talent, but he has unfortunately been forced to vacate the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship. He finally ascended himself to that throne after years and years of hard work and being a fan favorite, but it was his second. He's only the second ever holder of that title. It's a newly introduced belt that was originally won by Kota Ibushi at this year's Genesis show. But on May 4th, Osprey suffered a neck injury and his title defense against Takagi, and it's a tough break. And so hopefully he gets well soon and gets back into that title picture. And other serious injury news for talent that we think highly of here on the Two Bros Wrestling Show. But Ricky Starks sustained a fractured neck during his match with Adam Page on the April 21st edition of Dynamite. And Page hit Stark with a released German suplex. You can go back and watch it. At the time, I'm like, oh man, that looked like it hurt. He finished the match, of course, and then turns out when the pain persisted, imaging showed that, fractured neck. So that's 6 months of ring time that he's going to miss. And then the last injury news I have is another serious one, and this one affecting WWE, where Miz apparently suffered an ACL during his WrestleMania backlash match, ACL tear, and this injury could keep Miz out of action for 9 months or longer. So all of these are very high-profile talent, and they're in their respective companies that are going to be out for a majority of the rest of this year and into next year. In the case of Miz, though, it does show that just the danger you have when you are attacked by zombies in a wrestling context. Not good. 2 more items, Doug. Triple Mania has been scheduled for August 14th, and it's been made official that Kenny Omega will be defending his AAA World Championship against Andrade in Andrade's first post-WWE match. We reported this earlier as probably going to happen. We didn't have a date, but now we know August 14th, and Omega Andrade isn't the only interpromotional match on that card. Impact Knockout champ Deonna Purrazzo will battle the women's title holder there, Fabi Apache, at Triple Mania, and the main event of that show at Mexico City will be Psycho Clown versus Rey Escorpion in a mask versus hair contest, the lucha match. Excited. And then finally, and sadly, we'll have to pass along a couple of very notable deaths in the world of professional wrestling. Don Kernoodle, who was a former NWA World Tag Team Champion with Sergeant Slaughter, passed away at the age of 71. Personally, the Slaughter Kernoodle tag team was the first real tag team feud I remember, because they were engaged with the belts at that time with one of my all-time early faves, Jay Youngblood and Ricky Steamboat, and that's just brings back memories to me. Don Kernoodle being brought in.
You mentioning it, yes, absolutely.
And so, definitely our condolences. And then in more surprising news, just because it's gone way too soon, very controversial, but also a hardcore trailblazer and an ECW original through and through. But New Jack passed away of a reported heart attack at the very too young age of just 58 years old. So condolences to the family and friends of New Jack and Don Kernoodle. And Doug, with that,
main event time. It's
time for our main event. Double or nothing, Doug, on a holiday weekend.
I know. I love it how it all just comes together on a Sunday now. I like AEW pay-per-views on Sunday. I like this. Kind of threw me off at first, but I'm digging it. I can get into it.
Well, you are Mr. AEW, and I don't want to cost you any of the payola that you're receiving from Tony. So if there is a specific script he wants you to follow, I'm gonna be. You can lead as the dance partner here, and we'll start at any match you want to preview, because you are Mr. AEW. Dynamite, Double or Nothing, Doug.
I like that. Dynamite, Double or Nothing, Doug. We got to work on that. So I imagine we should probably start with the Casino Battle Royale. How do you even say that? Their Battle Royal. Royal Rumble.
Casino Battle Royal. You nailed it right there, though. Royal Rumble. For fans that don't know what the Casino Battle Royal is, it's essentially as WWE did with the Royal Rumble. It's a tweak on a Battle Royal concept, where the winner ends up with a future title match for the World Championship. My problem, though, Doug, with Double or Nothing, Casino Battle Royal, is it doesn't have, obviously, the history. It couldn't have the history of a Royal Rumble. I love the Royal Rumble match. I'm not a huge fan in general of Battle Royals. Last year's Casino Battle Royal was actually better than I was expecting, but it's never really featured as like a Royal Rumble could be the main event of the pay-per-view. I mean, it's like a big deal. Who goes to WrestleMania and all that? I don't know that they've quite yet defined the Casino Battle Royal in a way that makes it feel like as big a deal as they maybe could. Would you think that that's true too? And there's so many names that are going to be in it. Probably everyone who isn't doing something else on the card.
I know. That's what I'm looking at here. I jumped over to the CBS Sports because they have a pretty good rundown of all the matches and everybody involved. And, we've got Kristen Cage, Matt Sydal, Powerhouse Hobbs, Penta, Jungle Boy, Matt Hardy, Mark Quinn, Isaiah Cassidy, The Blade, Evil Uno, Colt Cabana, Preston Vance, Griff Garrison, Brian Pillman Jr., Max Caster, Anthony Bowens, QT Marshall, Nick Comoroto, Dustin Rhodes, Lee Johnson, and TBA. My money's on TBA, whoever that's going to be.
I guess it really is a matter of like who's legitimate world title contenders. Gosh, I'd love to see a Colt Cabana win, but he's not going to. I mean, looking down the road, and obviously this would be sort of foreshadowing, and we don't want to get ahead of ourselves as to who we think is going to win the main event. But as far as who we can see around who we think might be holding that title in a month or two, I could see a Penta, as being someone who hasn't had a whole lot to do here recently, but is definitely someone who could ascend to that, headline pay-per-view position pretty easily. Is there anybody else there, Doug, that really stands out to you? A Christian Cage, perhaps, as being someone else that could.
I'm going to say, as much as I love Penta, Penta has been used a lot as enhancement talent as of late, and has a lot of here today, gone tomorrow feuds. It's almost like creative has nothing for Penta right now. So I would love to see Penta ascend to that. And just looking at these names here, the only person other than if we get a shocking TBA entry, maybe them, whoever that could be. But I'm thinking that Christian Cage is probably the guy that's going to end up coming out of this, because I mean he's big name there, big money, big name. I'm not talking big money Matt Hardy, but Christian Cage.
Well, let's not also discount the fact that you with that TBA, that is an opportunity to debut some folks if they want to pop a news story or two or get Twitter a buzz as to guess who just showed up. So it wouldn't surprise me if we see somebody who might be near the end of their no compete show up just to get some internet buzz going. But yeah, I think
maybe somebody who didn't really even have a no compete whose contract just quietly ended.
You mean somebody who might be facing Kenny Omega anyway here in August might also have him here on the U.S. soil too. One for my belt, one for yours, kind of thing. I mean,
yeah,
I like that. I like that booking, but these things are kind of hard to say. I'd say though that either that mystery name or a Christian or a Penta probably would rise to the top as your main contenders there.
Yeah, I just don't know that Penta is the face of AEW. Well, clearly because his face is behind the mask. I mean, I think he'd make a great heel, but he has to have Marvez do cutting his promos, which is fine. Not Marvez. What's the other dude? Anyway, his translator. Yeah. So I don't know. It'll probably be Cage, unless we get like somebody super hot in that TBA section.
Where we're heading to next.
So looking at let's talk about the TNT Championship. We got Miro and Archer. I'm going to call this one straight up. Miro's not dropping that, but we're going to see an amazing, vicious, hard hitting match coming out of this. And Archer will come out looking very good, but Miro will come out looking much better.
This is going to be a hoss fight. Miro just won that belt, so I agree with you. He's not dropping it yet. Honestly, Miro was one who was, to me, a little slow in finding his footing. I know that we had to, sort of go through the comedy introduction, and that was fine for the sports entertainment fans, I suppose. But for the wrestling fans who knew that the former Rusev never got to just be the beast that he could be on WWE television, at least for extended periods of time. He's finally got that with his destruction of Darby Allin a couple of weeks ago. I want to see where else that goes. Where it's going to go at Double or Nothing, though, is a hoss fight. And it's going to be brutal, big men match, two big guys that can do more than most big guys. It's going to be a great contest. But, yes, champion retains.
Yep, absolutely. No disagreements there. So let's talk Inner Circle v Pinnacle in the Stadium Stampede.
2. Stadium Stampede, the sequel.
Yeah. So I don't see Inner Circle breaking up, which to me means now we're going to have an Inner Circle v Pinnacle continue to something in the future to where we're going to get the final rubber match out of all this.
That is the stipulation, folks, that if MJF's team goes over Jericho's team. Jericho says goodbye to the inner circle forever. Yeah, and what about just even the idea of a stadium stampede? Do you think that was the plan all along, or do you think that that's a punt? Because Jericho legitimately, for those that don't know, the contraption he's wearing on his arm is not a work. He legitimately injured his arm when he fell off the cage at the Blood and Guts match a couple of weeks ago. So do you think that the stadium stampede was a way to not have Jericho do too much, since really he's not supposed to be wrestling for 6 to 8 weeks?
You know, there are other ways to I mean, he could be the guy standing on the ring that never gets in the ring, you know, if they were to do something like that. I mean, there are ways to work that, but I guess if you've got a stadium, you might as well use it. I mean, it's right there.
Concern I always have is that the sequel is usually never as good as the original. And the original was right at the beginning of cinematic wrestling, before we all got so burned out on it that every company wisely abandoned it. Not that I'm saying that it won't be entertaining, because I trust the AEW and all the men that are involved in this, that they can make it entertaining. I just don't know that we're going to see the show-stealing surprise we had with the Stadium Stampede last time around, just because of diminished returns and just a general distaste. I think we're all now so looking forward to like full crowds and touring that the cinematic match may have lost a bit of its luster, even if it's done well.
Yeah. So here's a couple of things I'll call. Sammy gets hit by a golf cart. Sammy takes a massive bump off of something, and Inner Circle comes out with the win to continue this feud into some other wacky rubber match.
Yes, this feud must continue at least until the point that Jericho can wrestle and have a one-on-one blow-off match with just MJF at the top of the card, instead of something that's maybe presented beneath the headline matches. So I agree with you on all those accounts. Sammy's going to get hurt really bad. Poor Sammy, but it should be entertaining. I just hope that it's not. I hope they don't try too hard to top themselves and therefore take too many unnecessary risks.
Yeah, and speaking of taking unnecessary risks, we've got Sting, who is probably going to be limited in the ring, and Darby Allin versus Ethan Page and Scorpio Sky. I gotta say, with breaking up SCU, it was kind of telegraphed when Sky just kind of went off and started doing his own thing and turned heel. They kind of telegraphed that when a third of SCU just kind of quietly walked away. But
Darby Allin needs his heat back, I think. I mean, he had a pretty memorable TNT Championship run that ended the Miro. Obviously, it's not in the cards for him, at least at this point in time, to get his rematch. So he and his old buddy Sting, who continues to be protected in tag matches, and which at his age should be. It is notable. It's his first time performing in front of the paying crowd, because Sting's involvement up to this point has been cinematic matches. I imagine he won't do a whole lot, but you're going to bet you're going to see a Stinger Splash. You're probably going to see a Scorpion Deathlock, and I think that probably because he needs his heat back and because it is Sting that's his partner, that the faces win here, even though I kind of hate it because I really like Ethan Page and Scorpio Sky. And it should be noted that back in the old Evolve days, there was a long feud and a very storied rivalry, a one-on-one rivalry with some hardcore contests between Ethan Page and Darby Allin. So they have history that they haven't really played into a whole lot yet. Just a touch of it. So who knows? Maybe this is something else, Doug, that's destined to continue beyond just this, maybe into more singles contests.
Maybe so, because I'm calling the faces win, Scorpion Deathlock, tap out by Scorpio Sky. Because there's like poetry, it all rhymes.
Yeah. It's all about alliteration. Yeah, exactly. I agree with you, though. The faces
like poetry.
You're not going to have Sting losing just yet.
No, we can't. Like you say, first time in front of a crowd, baby faces are going over. Sting's getting the win. That's happening.
Agreed.
So let's talk Bucks versus Moxley and Kingston.
This is a match, one of the ones I'm looking forward to the most, because obviously the Young Bucks are one of the most talented teams of their generation, and Jon Moxley, having lost the title, much like Darby Allin, where I said earlier that he's not getting that immediate rematch. I know that Moxley has talked about wanting his belt back from Kenny, but as far as booking goes, that's not where they're going with this. They're going with the buddy storyline, and they've been getting some pretty significant wins on television as a tag team. I like them as a tag team. I think this is a great thing for John to do. You can't always be in the main event and around the World Championship, so to give him something else to do, team him with one of the best talkers in the business in Kingston. I actually think that the Bucks lose the belts here.
Wait, is this a title match?
Is it not for the belts? I think it's for the AEW Tag Team Championship.
It is a championship match. Oh wow! Yeah, I was going to say that I'm going with Moxley and Kingston for this. I didn't realize that they had worked their way up to a title match, though. Cool.
Yes, they beat the Acclaimed to ascend to the second spot and jump over them in the tag team. They beat the Acclaimed. They beat the Varsity Blondes. So they were working their way up the rankings, which is one thing I love that AEW does, that they make those rankings actually mean something, is to try to climb. And I think that this is one of the title changes we see on the show.
Yep, I agree that, I didn't realize this was, I thought this would build to a championship match once they beat the Bucks here and say, okay, look, clearly we now get a title shot because, we've worked our way all the way up to you. But yeah, I can see that now. I'm in agreement, and it's, they seem like they're really having fun, and
they, it is worth thinking about the fact that they are going back on tour as well. And that means, I know that their touring is different than WWE's touring as far as the rigors of the schedule, and that you could easily fly someplace, do the TV show and fly back. But, someone is about to become a proud papa. So being part of a tag team as opposed to being expected to be on TV every week because you're around the world title, I can see this being a nice transition spot for these guys. And plus, they're a heck of a lot of fun, and they get to use Wild Thing when they come to the ring, which is also awesome. Wild Thing hits, they come through the crowd, and once they actually have arenas that haven't seen wrestling action in a while come through the crowd, people are going to go nuts for that. So yeah, give them the straps.
All right, let's jump to another title, which I think is going to change. I just kind of gave my spoilers there, but Shida versus Britt Baker, DMD. I think it's time for Britt Baker to take that strap and run with it, man. What do you think?
I wish we had more friction between us, that we could argue or disagree. But thus far, we're calling it exactly the same. This is one where it's amazed me, and I have honestly not been happy for a while about it. But the fact that why in the world is Baker not in the title picture? But now that it's here, I will say that my apologies, Tony. But you're right, and I was wrong. I knew she was that level, but the fact that you managed to show restraint and hold off is going to make it even more special when she does win. Because, and it's nothing against Shida, who I think is one of the best women's wrestlers in the world, but she's running out of opponents. She's beat just about every legitimate contender up to this point and has held the belt for more than a year. You combine that with the language barrier issues, having a heel for a baby face, whether it's Shida in a rematch or someone else to ascend. I think having Baker go over, it is her time. It's just she's the best thing, male or female, really going on the show and in all the wrestling as far as I'm concerned. She's just made me such a believer. I was a fan to begin with, but Doug, the work she's done the last year to even improve, I think she's probably the most improved wrestler on the roster, and she was great to begin with.
Yep, absolutely. So let's see if we can shake things up here. Cody Rhodes versus Anthony Ogo. With Cody defending America against that evil Brit. boxer Anthony Ogo.
We talked about Moxley about to be a proud papa. Obviously, Cody is as well. Between that and his backstage duties, maybe this is something to do in the meantime. But and it's nothing against Cody or Ogogo, but this has been kind of convoluted to me, Doug. I can't say that this is one that I care about one way or the other.
I hate to admit it, and Tony's going to cut my check in half for this, but yeah, I'm right there with you. I'm not really invested in this at all, and I'm wondering if Austin Gunn, who was injured the other day, if that's a work, which sets up Cody. I'm not sure when Renee Young or Brandy Rhodes are due, but maybe it's time. Maybe this sets up storyline at least for Cody to take a massive internal injuries from this champion boxer, and maybe do some behind the scenes stuff and work up to his paternity leave. I don't know, but I'm going to call it for a go-go. I'm not sure why, but I'm calling it for a go-go.
Daggone it! I want to disagree with you. I think that this is a storyline way to get Rhodes off TV for a bit as well. The whole patriotic angle, him using the American Dream name, I mean, it was an interesting promo for 2021. I know that Cody likes to sometimes take things back old school, but maybe that one was maybe a little over the top old school, because I'm not sure at this point that the feud was worthy of that kind of impassioned promo. I think Ogogo has a good look, and maybe he'll end up being something someday, but he's not been showcased in a way to give us any indication as to what he has to offer. It's mainly been a few punches, quick knockouts, and brutality. I think he goes over and Cody goes away for a bit, and then maybe somewhere down the line, post-paternity leave, he comes back and gets his revenge on the QT Marshall's faction, because Cody's whole AEW tenure has pretty much been defined by being the good, trusting friend and someone turning their back on him. So maybe Cody will take this time off to reevaluate his choices and friends and come back a new man.
Well, yeah, that's a good point, because the Go-Go is part of what, the Monster Factory, or just the Factory? Factory. So Factory versus the Nightmare family. So maybe some more of QT's faction get involved, which helps to put a Go-Go over. There's maybe some shenanigans or whatever. Somebody beats up Arn, takes him out. We'll see, but I'm calling it for a Go-Go.
A Go-Go.
So let's talk about the Hangman Brian Cage. I think it's pretty cool that Cage took Hangman out clean. And I love that story building up to it. There's a lot of the Dark Order and a handful of the Team Taz there. I mean, we've talked about this before. Everybody's in a faction.
Everybody in AEW is in a faction.
And I was going to call this out earlier, because I noticed this. The Varsity Blondes went from tag team to faction. I'm not sure when that happened, but when they were cutting a promo, they added the third person.
They did.
And by my rules, that now makes them a faction instead of just a tag team.
Can't remember her first name, last name Hart. She's been getting my attention. She's been wrestling on Dark and Dark Elevation, and she was a legit world or national champion cheerleader for whatever school she had attended. And I like the addition. She's definitely got the same kind of look. And so, I like them as a team, but we digress. This is another faction war.
So we have two factions that aren't necessarily going to war, but there may be some mild shenanigans. I think maybe Brian Cage is getting his push now. I think they're about to strap a rocket on Page. As much as I love Hangman, and earlier this year I did call it, that Hangman will take that off of Kenny Omega. I think Hangman can still take the AEW Championship off of Omega and lose nothing here if he does lose, to push Cage forward. Otherwise, we're going to get a rubber match down the road at some point with Cage and Cage and Page, yeah. And I'm not sure I want to see that,
Okay, I'm disagreeing with you here, only because not just because I want to disagree with you, but I think it's going to be a good match. I think it's going to be one of the better contests of the evening. I think that looking down the line at opponents, I think that Page needs to stay around the world title scene, and I think he might be in line for the next shot or near the next shot, despite whoever wins the Casino Battle Royal. I think that it will involve some shenanigans, and maybe the Dark Order, who have been trying to recruit Page, maybe they help him out by negating Taz's minions here. Again, I'm just booking, but I can see this one going either way, but I'm going to call it for Page just to be disagreeable because I'm tired of agreeing with Doug.
Words you've said many times throughout the year. All right, so that brings us to our Triple Threat World Championship. Kenny Omega versus Orange Cassidy versus Pac or Pac, depending on where you're from, I guess.
Yeah, triple threat match between your belt collector and two guys that I don't necessarily think of as at this point in time. I think Pac could be. There's no way in the world that Kenny Omega is losing this match. I'll just go ahead and give my prediction first of all. Second of all, I think they'll probably deliver a better match than I'm expecting. I just don't know that the story behind this one excites me as much as some of the stories around the other matches, which is a shame considering this is the world title match and likely the final match on the show.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure it'll be an amazing match. We're going to have some elite shenanigans, I'm sure. But we have three people in three different factions here. We've got the elite, we've got best friends, and we've got Death Triangle. So, everybody's going to have some buddies to get involved and help them out if they need to. To stop all those other buddies from interfering. But at the end of the day, I'm not sure who takes the pin here. I'm really not sure, but Kenny does get the win.
I think that outside of the singles program he had where he went over Jericho, Orange Cassidy has primarily been featured either as part of a trios, tag team, faction wars, comedy segments. I love the man. He's very entertaining. He's not going to walk away your world champion. Pac is a more, I think, legitimate contender, but he was absent for a long while with visa issues and everything else during the pandemic. So I think that maybe he gets a match down the line one-on-one, which might mean that it's Cassidy, I think, that maybe takes the pinfall here. But again, sad to say that I'm probably more excited about Omega defending at AAA against Andrade, or even Omega defending against Moose at the next Impact pay-per-view as far as intrigue as storylines go. Again, the match will deliver. Not been crazy about how they got there, but Kenny Omega is just not going to lose that belt at this point in time.
I agree. So we're disagreeing on what one match?
Cage and Page. Yeah, and whoever ends up being wrong, me or you, we could just say that we misheard. And I said Page. Oh, I thought you said Cage. No, Page. That's not what I said.
Agreed. Sounds good to me. All right, let's.
That's double or nothing. Big finish, and this is. Let's just start with the botch of the week because, daggone it, I'm tired of disagreeing with you. But I will also fight you if we disagree this time because botch of the week. Zombies, wrestling. No. Bottom line. I mean, there was nothing worse in wrestling this week than that. There's been nothing worse in wrestling this year than that. I know we covered it extensively at the end of our show last week, reviewing the Backlash pay-per-view, but Doug, that still just leaves an awful taste. They barely mentioned it on Raw. I think they knew they had a floating piece of excrement there that they had to deal with, so they didn't talk about it in great detail.
So I was going to say, it's been a busy week. I got all kinds of wackiness going on outside of our wrestling show. So the only wrestling I've actually got to see, of course, is Dynamite this week, and was going to say, I'm not going to give a match of the week or anything like that, but I am setting aside some time for Zombies because it was ridiculous. I don't care if it was a 7-figure payout. It was ridiculous. I still haven't had a chance to see it yet. Army of the Dead looks awesome. reminds me of some sort of like old school like 80s like action flick with Batista in it and zombies, which apparently could be from space, or at least they're cyborgs. So yes, I'm on board with that. But don't put those zombie cyborgs from space in a wrestling ring. They do not belong there. No, no, no.
There's a lot of ways you could do the tie-in, take the money, and present it in a way that did not make Damian Priest and The Miz and Morrison look like idiots. I mean, you could have done a backstage segment. You could have done a hokey commercial with all those guys involved and play it off tongue-in-cheek. Instead, you put it out in the wrestling ring between things that people are supposed to take seriously, and it was just it was not good. And obviously, Miz is going to lose 9 months of his career because of that mess. So,
you know, and a side note here, love or hate Miz, the man has never had an injury until, you know, last Sunday. What's it been in the WWE, like 10 years now, like a decade? Never had an injury, never taken out for any kind of injuries or anything like that. His first injury that sidelines him for like, what, 9 months?
9 months.
Zombies. Zombies. No. The Undertaker in the 90s was the last, early 90s was the last person that could get away with that kind of over-the-top gimmick. And even then, I have to admit, as a young wrestling fan, I didn't like it. I didn't really get into Taker until he became a more realistic version of himself. The whole supernatural stuff has always left me cold, and that has not changed. Zombies in 2021 on wrestling, nope. No.
Total botch of the week. Doug, you don't have any performer or match of the week?
You know what? We've leaned hard into AEW this tonight, so I'm going to step back and let somebody who's seen more wrestling than AEW talk about what's going on in the world, Kevin.
Well, performance of the week, I'm giving it. There were several that were notable this week, but to me, Bronson Reed, the Colossus, he had a fantastic match, which he always has a fantastic match, but he had a fantastic match with Johnny Gargano, and he wrestled away from Gargano, the North American Championship. There's been stops and starts with Bronson's push in the past where I thought that, okay, this is when they start getting behind him, and then he goes away for a period of time. And so I started to question whether or not they truly put full faith in him with a sustained run, and this means to me that they're likely going to. And it was apparently on the anniversary of the 14-year anniversary of his debut match. And I saw after match footage where they filmed him in front of the audience with his wife, and like he was genuinely overcome with emotion. And it's not just a sentimental reason I'm picking him. That man has a unique look, as a unique character, and I think will do great things as a champion. So kudos to him for the long journey, well deserved. And I think that he's not going to drop the ball now that he has it. Match of the week. And this is one I think that you I know you saw, so you can agree with me on that Cesaro Roman Reigns contest. I know we praised it last week when we did our review, but that is as good as you can get from two of the best doing it right now. Cesaro, as we said last week, I mentioned in my mind it's the best solid month of his professional life, especially in WWE. And then for Roman Reigns, you and I have praised him for the past year on the work he's doing, and they both were putting those talents in the same match at the same high level, and it just made a little bit of magic for one of the last shows that you're going to see in that Thunderdome concept for pay-per-views. And so it's that they're leaving it with a pretty memorable match. If I had to give a runner-up, since you don't have a match of the week, Doug, I know that being a high-profile match, maybe a lot of our fans and folks watching this probably saw that too. But if you're going to watch an under-the-radar match that a lot of folks may have missed, tune in to NXT UK from this past week. If you can get Peacock to work, Doug, that is. That's a topic for another time. But A-Kid versus Tyler Bates was absolutely off the chart for the Heritage Cup. There was a title change, I guess a trophy change, since that championship is actually the trophy. That has very unique rules, the Heritage Cup does, where they wrestle in rounds. And if you love technical wrestling and a very, very ground-based but still modern look at what wrestling can be, if you love that style, you're not going to find any better than what those two men put on this week. And so check that one out.
Excellent. Well, I think that wraps it up, right?
That's all we have for this week. But, Doug, as far as next week goes, let's tell the folks it's Memorial Day weekend. So we're giving you the weekend off because we're taking the weekend off. We want you to go enjoy Double or Nothing, enjoy your families, and we're going to be back in 2 weeks. And, Doug, when we do that, 2 weeks, double pay-per-views, because 2 weeks in a row after that in June, you have NXT returning to pay-per-view as well as Hell in a Cell. So we're going to do 2 previews for the price of 1 on our next show, which is the first Sunday in June. We'll see everybody then, 8 o'clock.
Take care, everybody. Be safe.